Hey, TWiP Pro members, get ready for a really good conversation I just had with my friend, Miss Renee Robin. It was a good critique session, but it was an even better conversation about some unexpected topics. TWiP Pro critique session number 4 starts now. This is TWiP. All right, TWiP Pro members, it's time for another TWiP Pro critique. This time I have my friend and Canadian who's freezing her butt off up north, Miss Renee Robin. Hey, Renee, what's going on?
Not too much. Frozen. Lots of layers on.
You're frozen?
Scarves and sweaters and fuzzy pants.
I feel like I want to sing that song, Do You Want to Build a Snowman, to you, you know?
Yeah, it's the wrong kind of snow for snowmen here right now. It's too the wrong
It's
weather.
frozen snow. It's that hard, powdery stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the stuff that you face wash each other with, but not snowball.
Ugh, jeez. Yeah. I'm telling you, this is a little bit too warm. I'm just saying, you know,
Just saying.
California, just saying. So you ready to do this? So we're gonna dive into TWiP Pro and go into the photo critique channel and see what we see. You ready to do it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
All right. Straight
up, I'm not like trained in the arts world or anything like that, or I'm not like a judge. I can only go off of my own personal bias, but that's
just like the rest of us humans, you know. Troy Miller is a judge, and what Troy Miller, I'm going to channel Troy Miller, who's done a couple of critiques with me, and Troy always says it takes.
I hope he doesn't judge sky swapping.
No, but he says, yeah, exactly. You know Troy Miller. So Troy says it takes a lot of guts to even submit an image into the photo critique channel. So the folks that did submit in there, thank you for submitting, and thank you for having the guts to do it, especially in front of somebody like this woman, Renee Robin, who is not mean, but she is she's unfiltered. I think that's this way. You're like rye alcohol, right?
Funny story about rye alcohol and I don't get along very well.
Yeah. You're not Honey Jack. You're rye alcohol.
Just savage.
Savage. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share the TWiP Pro community with you. Here we go. And the first image that we want to look at here is from member Mark Harris. So this is an abstract. What did he say? He said, a recent image in my abstractions series. Okay, here we go. What do you think, Renee?
It's really hard to see. So sometimes that's like intentional and sometimes it's not. I feel like I'd have to see the whole series to really understand what the series means, which does make me question. I think a series should be really good as a body of work, but also the individual pieces kind of need to stand on their own to really understand what is going on. This looks like the side of a body, kind of. I don't know if I would have framed it there. Typically, it kind of doesn't. Maybe this is what art does, is it, starts a conversation, a dialogue as to what's really going on, in which case it's effective. But I don't know what's going on enough to not really have an opinion on it, which is...
Yeah, there's not a lot. It's abstract to the nth degree in terms of abstraction. I agree with you. I would love to see this. Looks like it's like Mark said, it's one in a series. So I would love to see this in context in the series of the other images that this is with, and you probably see more of this person or different body parts, I would assume, in the series. And when you finally made it to this one, you'd probably be like, oh, that's this part, or that's the butt, or whatever. I'm thinking it's a butt, by the way. This looks like a butt and the back of a leg. That's what I'm thinking.
That's what you got out of it? Looks like torso.
That's what I get out of it. What do you get?
What kind of butts do you look at? Looks like torso and side boob to me.
No, well, maybe. I wonder. See, it's making us think. Look at that.
And so in which case, in that regard, it's a successful image, but on the other side of it, it kind of just, without seeing the whole series, just makes me question. So I'm not really sure how to have an opinion on this. It might be too subtle or too abstract for me. But then again, also, I don't like Pablo Picasso, so.
I was gonna say, it's like if you go to MoMA, like, or one of the modern art museums, and you see these pieces where they take like a piece of chalk and just draw a couple lines, and that's 20 grand. You know?
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's in
there
that
is
vein.
the side of it. There is the side of it as, you know, if you are going to judge something, you should be an excellent connoisseur of that subject, right? So when you listen to certain types of music, so for example, my mom listens to my music, which sometimes is heavy metal, and she hears just noise, right? But then when I hear, you know, certain guitar players play like Gary Holt, you know, I can hear talent and I can hear why he is as good as everyone says he is, right? Or like, you know, listening to, you know, anybody in Trans-Siberian Orchestra, you can go like, okay, well, these are excellent musicians and this is why. But for people who don't like that genre of music, they just hear something that kind of hurts their ears. And so the same thing goes for modern art and often abstract series like this, is that if you don't really spend a lot of time swimming in that world, it's really hard to be an excellent judge of that.
Yeah, you know what I wonder? Like looking at images like this, and considering Mark said that this was one in a series, how do you? And you're like the perfect person to ask this to, because there's a lot of series in your body of work, like the military series and the fantasy series and the music series. There's you get on these veins. How do you do that? Is it from an artist standpoint? Do you just like, you have this wild hair that I feel like doing this kind of thing and you just do it until you don't want to do it anymore? Or do you plan it out? Or do you do other things, like you're working on multiple series simultaneously?
For me, I'm definitely working on multiple series simultaneously, and they all happen to be series by accident. It wasn't really planned on my part. I make what I like, and then I kind of like sort them into what series I think it works best on. It was never a conscious effort to be like, this is going to be a series because of this, and this is going to be a series because of this. Some of the series that I have, such as like the military work, started off as because I had an opportunity to apply for a position to do box art for a video game company, and I had to create work to submit to be in the competition for it. And so that's how that started, you know, becoming a series. But the step before that was that I was burned out, and I needed a way to fall in love with photography again that wasn't like pretty girls and pretty dresses and so on and so forth. So I was like, okay, we're going to change everything. You know, one of my friends who's a vet is going to come over, we're going to shoot it in the basement. And that's how the first image started. And then all of a sudden that turned into like, hey, you should apply for this. And then, you know, 4 years later, it's a pretty decent body of work, you know, and there's so much of it that isn't even released yet. You know, which has turned into like other opportunities, like, you know, with, you know, the Canadian military and so on. So
yeah, you say a pretty decent body of work, and I would have to, and I'll screen share it when we get through this critique series. But people should go check out your website and look at the images that are up there. It is just ridiculous. I mean, it is a body of work to die for, literally.
I don't know.
It's crazy,
but thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm not being overly complimentary. I'm like, when people look at the body of work, it's like, holy crap. It's crazy. And I can't imagine like how many hours of your life cumulatively you put into putting all those things together. Cause I've seen some of the work that you do, and it's like the Photoshop document before it's done. And you are stressing Photoshop to the max. Like Photoshop is like another layer, really? Do I have to?
You should see what's happening now that I'm getting into environment building. It's like,
really?
Yeah. I used to be like, oh, 9 gigs, that's a pretty big file. Now that I'm building environments on top of that, I'm having to build like multiple PSB files. So just like stacking the actual PSBs on top of each other, as opposed to like, oh, okay, Photoshop is literally crashing on my spaceship of a computer. So I have
that's crazy. You have to nest. Your files are so big. Your files are so big. You almost the files be outside of the main document. That's crazy. That is crazy. All right, let's move on to the next one. This next image is from Craig Stampley, another one of our awesome members. Thanks for submitting this, Craig. Let me screen share this guy. And here we go. This is a wedding shot, obviously. And what do you think?
I think the story is a little bit confusing. It's like, what's up with your butt? But I mean, like, I
All
love,
eyes on the butt.
yeah, which I mean, I'm a fan of those, so it's not the end of the world. But as a wedding shot, I would love if the eye lines were a little bit higher, like they were looking at the beading or like doing up the back of the dress a little bit higher than quite that low. I like all the interaction. It's just the eye line that kind of makes it weird for me with the women at the back. The lighting is really pretty. That part is really nice, and the styling is really nice. It would just maybe, I mean, I can also get this is not a staged image. This is, obviously event photography, and you're just kind of catching everyone as they're going. The bride's hands are really pretty. The hands of everyone around them is really nice. I just wish that they were all looking a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And the girl behind, like bent all the way over, is a little bit of a distracting line. So the other two girls on the right of the image, they kind of pull the viewer in, but then we have somebody who's bent completely at the waist behind, and it's really like jarring. So we have these like nice lines going in like a V, and then we have just this one horizontal line that kind of turns the whole thing into an A, and it's I mean, being a Photoshop junkie, I'd have been like editing her out.
Right. We'll put on that hat.
Too much work.
Put on your compositing hat. If you were gonna work on this, and you were gonna like, let me guess, you'd probably take the bride and put her in some awesome landscape somewhere.
No. I definitely, I mean, if I was to do anything with this image, like from a compositing standpoint, I would leave everything the same. I would just like spend the time and clone out the girl who's on the left, who's bent over, which is really hard to do because there's a corner in there to deal with. I mean, there's lots of rebuilding. Like, it's just not an easy removal at all. I mean, you're also dealing with like patterned wood floor, so you'd have to like find a corner of an image from somewhere else and put that in there, or just from another shot where that leg wasn't covering that corner. It would be super tough. But I mean, without her in that image, it's a great shot.
I would imagine there's probably other images around this one in that series that he shot. So Craig, maybe post some different alternatives to this image that we can have a look at that doesn't have the woman on the left bending down. I agree with you. That is distracting, having her butt kind of sticking out there. And the other I would have loved to see this image, like if the woman on the left wasn't as sort of contorted as she is, and then there's a third woman that's really obscured, and I can't even tell. There's a third woman back there.
Yeah, there's three heads back there.
Yeah, there's three heads. Yeah, I don't know, because it almost looks like that the one on the right has two heads, because she's like it's a two-headed person.
You can see the other set of hands and like the torso and feet and stuff like that. That one didn't bother me as much, because that can be, I mean, she's really just implied, which is fine by my mind, in my opinion, right? I mean, if you're submitting this for print competition, maybe they would crucify you over it, maybe not. I don't really know. But it's mostly just that the woman that's bent over at the hips in the back, which really draws the viewer to be like, oh, we're looking at, somebody's butt. And you want the image to be that.
What else would you change on this besides the woman, the butt woman? Would you add like any detail into that skylight up there? Would you remove the painting off the wall? Any other changes?
From a compositing standpoint, I like cleaner backgrounds. I don't mind the tree though, because like the tree kind of balances out with the painting there. So if you get rid of one, you get rid of both. But I think having them both there isn't the worst thing ever either, because of course the painting is, with the perspective, is pulling the viewer and the eye in towards the center again, which is towards the faces of the women in the image. So, I mean, it depends on how you want to go with this. If you wanted to go super minimalist and really clean it up, then yeah, that would work. This looks like it's somewhere in Europe. I don't know if it actually is.
Yeah, Craig, if you're when you see this, let us know where you shot this.
I'd love to see.
Very cool. All right, let's move on to the next image. Thanks again, Craig, for submitting this.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I don't ever submit to critiques because I'm a giant chicken.
I love it.
I submit to friends, but I don't submit to like open critiques like this. I'm like,
Well, look at this one. Look at this one. So this is from this is Tanya from Kyle Nishioka. What are your first impressions of this one?
I like the hands a lot. The wind is really strong, but of course you can't really control that. I like the lighting. We have just a very, I mean, it could be just my screen. Pardon me. It could be just my screen, but it looks like there's like a little bit of color on her right arm, our left, in the shadow there that maybe is a little bit inconsistent. I mean, she's got great skin anyways.
Oh, yeah.
From a retouching standpoint, the roots always make me crazy. So there's
the roots on her, you mean the dark roots on her hair?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I typically, when I get images like this, I'll go in and I'll retouch that out, which takes a little while. You can do that by using soft light layers. So you can use a soft light layer and sample the color of her natural hair, of the dyed hair, and then paint it lightly over the dark roots, and it just makes them a little bit less obvious. And then you can use the same thing with like sampling the pink. You can make the pink a little bit more saturated because we have like a saturation difference between the green that's going on in the background and the purple in the dress. And then we have this kind of like faded out, you know, not really recently dyed pink streaks. And so I would probably try to match up that saturation between them all so that the colors are, you know, evenly represented.
Nice. Nice. Look at that. See, that's the power of having a retoucher in a critique session, because you're like, you're like, this is exactly what I would do to retouch this image. What else would you change? I mean, how's the background? You like the bokeh of the background, or would you put it a little bit more in focus or less?
I don't mind it, the aperture that it's shot at. I mean, of course, that horizon line goes right through her neck, which is historically something that we try to avoid. In my experience anyways. So the nice thing is once again, if we were to tackle this from a compositing standpoint, which of course is super tricky, you know, the background being as, you know, out of focus as it is, it can be easier to remove that, but then it's a complicated mask with her hair there as well. But it could be, you could lower that horizon line in post. I mean, also the other option is I would just look at the other images to see if there's anything there that maybe was shot at a slightly different angle with her. But I mean, like the pose is really nice and the hands are nice, which is something that is often, you know, one of the things that can be quite jarring to an image like this is that, you know, it'll be like, everything's awesome, but she's got fists or something, right?
Yeah.
Or like Mickey Mouse
or
hands.
she's an amputee because we can't see one of the limbs or something, right?
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, that's one of the nice things that's really I like about this image a lot is the hands are quite pretty. So, but yeah,
I love the expression. The expression on this, I love it. And in the comments on this image, Kyle, I put she looks like an elf, like like I feel like underneath that hair there were pointy ears in there, you know. Right?
Yeah.
Does she, I mean, with the blonde hair and just kind of the Scandinavian look, she looks kind of elfin.
Yeah, it definitely will. Also, because some of the things that's giving that impression is the way her eyebrows are filled in on her face. It's a very, you know, like how we see it displayed and portrayed in film is, you know, that kind of line. So, and same thing with the makeup, right? One of the other things maybe I would do if we were getting super picky is, so you see on our left, the eye that's in the shadow, we see like a rather defined eyeshadow, or maybe it's just a shadow in general. I can't zoom in far enough to see.
Yeah, right here.
Maybe what I would do is, once again, using a soft light layer, is just match up a little bit of the eyeshadow that's on the flash side. There we go. It's a little pixelated for me, but yeah, so what I would probably do is in post-production using a soft light layer is I would just match a little closer, of course, because it's the brighter side, but I would definitely make it look like she actually had makeup on her left eye, our right.
Yeah. No, just for the symmetry of it all, right?
Yeah, just so that it's not quite as different. I mean, obviously the eye that's in the shadow is going to have a lot more, you know, it's not going to be washed out, right? So like this image on my screen looks like it's a tiny bit overexposed in the skin, but that also could just be my monitor. I really am not sure. So maybe the balance on the eye makeup would look a little bit closer if it was not quite as overexposed. So we could fix that if we either use a curves layer or if you use Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw or Capture One, you can just grab your highlights and just pull them down just like a tiny, tiny little bit, or just the exposure in general, because I mean, there's nothing here that's going to go completely dark, but maybe just pull with the highlights and the lights down by like maybe 5-10% and just see how that looks.
Interesting. Look at that. Gold comments. Golden. Cool. All right.
Just to see what happens. I mean, it might not be the answer, but it might be fine. So
I think we have one more in here. This is from a new member, Howard. Welcome to the community, Howard.
Hello, Howard.
And here we go. This is called Comfort for the Fallen.
I like it a lot. One of the
I like the colors. I'm a fan of oversaturation and saturated, crispy, contrasty looks. And this is all of that stuff. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really nice shot. You know, of course, it evokes a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling. One of the things that I do notice, though, is that the red and the blue saturated parts really pull me away from the flower. So it's very much so fighting, because like our eyes are going to go to the brightest, sharpest, most saturated point in the image naturally, and we are wired to notice red, right? So, you know, as a species, we are hardwired to be like, oh, that thing is red, whether it's good or bad, but we're going to notice that first. And that was the thing that I noticed first in the image, and the flower was second. So to get around that, oftentimes what I'll do is I will either desaturate the red, like, so that jacket, I would maybe select the red tones and either desaturate them, or in reality, I would probably use a combination of reducing the saturation and the luminance a little bit, and maybe adjusting the hue just a tiny, tiny bit, you know, one way or the other, so that it's not quite as red. It'll maybe go like a little more magenta, or, but just something so that first thing we notice is the bright yellow flowers. And I would do the same thing with the blues. I would maybe reduce the saturation and luminance just a tiny little bit on the blues, so that they're not competing as much, because of course the part that matters here are the names that we can't really see, and the flower, and then the environment comes second.
Yeah. Would you go as far as to add like a gradient on the right side of the frame to kind of knock all that detail down a little bit and draw attention more to the flower?
You could. I don't really know if it's super necessary, because I mean, it is a brightly lit environment. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it really kind of adds to the story.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the other side of it is that the flower itself looks like it's less saturated than the rest of the image because it's so much brighter. So maybe once again, like, and this could be just be my monitor once again, or it could be your monitor, the one that you're working on. Maybe it's not calibrated. So that's one thing to everyone. If you are working on image processing, definitely look at getting your monitors calibrated using like a data color spider or whatever's other color rate or whatever. Google will give you those answers, but it'll definitely help you see the color and contrast and luminance in your images a lot more accurately. So, I mean, when I look at this, the image that the flower is reflected on, so the reflection of the flower, is the luminance and saturation that I would like to see for the main flower, like for the real flower, the one that is not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right?
Because we're definitely losing highlight detail there a little bit. And once again, this could just be my monitor. But I would love to see that flower just like reduced in luminance a little bit, so that it is more saturated. Granted, it won't be as bright anymore, but then we just reduce, you know, the luminance in the blues and reds over on the far side of the image. And I think that it would be a lot stronger. Yeah. I'm open to your opinion on that one too, though, right?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's a little hot on the real flower, not the reflection. And I didn't even think about, the reflection looks like it's perfect. So if the exposure on the reflection was the actual flower, I think that'd be much stronger. And then, then knock the reflection down a little bit. I also think in terms of usage of this, I was thinking this is one of those images that would be great for, especially if you darken down the right side of the screen or the image, it would be great for some sort of illustration on Memorial Day or something, even like a double truck in a magazine, right? Because then the right side of the page is darkened a little bit, and there's copy on top of it, and then you've got the main subject on the left side. So I think it's well done. Well
Yeah, I
done.
mean
I like.
the other side of it that we can do with this that could be just way easier is just crop it in a little bit. So just bring down the top and side crop off the right side and the top. So then
Like
we just cut
this.
out that blue and red altogether.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna have like a nice balance between, the flower and then the yellow stuff that's going on in the background that's out of focus. So then it'll
Yeah.
pull the eye back. So you start by looking at the flower, you look at the names and everything that's implied there, and then it just pulls you down the rest of the implied environment that's going on.
Yeah, you're right. Because the rest of those elements aren't really adding so much. I mean, you don't really need that many bricks in there in order to know that that's a path. You don't really need that many of the people in the background to know that there are other people there, and because they're adding the kind of mottled color and the reflection in the wall anyway. Yeah. So yeah. And then if you did crop it down a little bit, it would definitely draw the attention directly to that flower. And then if you did your suggestion of adjusting the exposure on the flower, boom, there you go. Nice.
Yeah, I think the thing that now that I'm looking at it a little longer is that we're having a conflict. Sorry, vehicles. In this case, we're having like a conflict between, well, is it a flower in an environment? Like, so is the environment the story, or is like the flower and the names right behind it the story? So I would probably like to see the rose, represented a little bit larger in the frame. So cropping it in might do that.
Yeah. Very cool. Very good. Good. I think that's our, let me stop the screen share here. I think that's our last image to critique today. Good comments. See, you're a pro, you're a surgeon. You get in there and you're like, yeah, if you just, move this molecule over, it'll change the whole thing.
I think that, and then I watch professional judging, and then I'm like, I don't know anything.
No,
who are like really good.
I don't think professional judging. Yeah, of course, that's awesome and has its place. But I think there's a lot of value in just normal people giving their opinion on other images, right? Because unless you're submitting and you're shooting, even if you're shooting specifically for an image competition, that the result, the image that you're creating is not for judges. It's for the average person to look at and enjoy, right? The judges are just telling you things that you could have done better to make those average people enjoy it more, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, the other thing is when you enter into judging competitions, like, the PDN annuals or something like that, you have to understand kind of the formula, what they're looking for. So you're shooting I think the difference is when you go to enter for competitions is, are you learning to shoot to win the competition, which means you're pleasing your client and the client is the judges, or are you shooting to please yourself, and does that just so happen to be something that the judges appreciate? And those are not the same thing. So you have to know your client, and sometimes we just happen to make things that we like, that judging loves. And sometimes we don't, right? So that's something that, like, I don't enter competitions for that reason. I entered once and they crucified me, and I was like, yeah, but I sold and licensed that image for thousands of dollars. So your argument is invalid.
Right.
And I stopped entering after that, other than one other digital arts competition in Australia. I just kind of don't bother anymore, because the work that I do necessarily isn't the kind of stuff that judging is going to appreciate. And I have no interest in taking time out of my life to consciously make artwork to at least try to win a competition, when I could be doing stuff elsewhere.
That's an interesting point. I wonder like how people that are, beginners, advanced amateurs, and amateurs, how should they approach that? Because you bring up a good point of the subjectivity of judging, even what we're doing, the critiquing, right? And the subjectivity of it all it seems like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they can give you substantive, actionable ideas to make your photography that much better. But on the other hand, they're just humans, just like you and I, and have opinions, and their opinions may not be in alignment with what you think your image is for, which may derail you in terms of, well, I thought this was amazing. I was trying to show this, and this, and they said it sucked. So now you may alter your vision as a creator, right? You may alter your vision to do something different based on what this person said arbitrarily. So what do they do? What's the solution?
I mean, the solution is, and what I've done, at least for me, and that's all I can say is the solution, was to get a lot of different opinions on the work, depending on what I want to do with the work. So if I'm trying to impress an ad agency, then I'm going to go talk to people who I know who have worked at ad agencies and say, what am I doing right and what am I doing wrong? Am I wanting to just please myself? Then I'm not asking anybody any opinion anywhere. I'm just making this because I like it, and that's it. You know, am I trying to get wedding clients? Well, then I'm going to talk to people who are specialists in that field and say, hey, if I'm doing this, 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 and this, what do you think of this? And of course, I don't work in that world. But if you're an amateur, I mean, first and foremost, I think it's important to try and find ways to enjoy what you're making for as long as possible, because once it turns professional, it changes it. You know, it's no longer about like skipping through the daisies, making whatever you want and feeling good about it. And then somebody's hopefully going to pay you and everyone's chasing, and hopefully, you know, every now and then one of them makes it. But even Hans Zimmer is trying to retire from making music for movies, for like superhero movies, and they keep pulling him back, but he doesn't want to do it. Right. And that's Hans Zimmer. So, I mean, like, so as far as that opinion goes, then it, like, I think you just have to keep your mind clear on what you want and what you really want. So you have to keep redefining what success means to you over and over.
But see, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like how, and I'm sorry for going so deep on this, but I'm interested. So you're the perfect person to ask this. And while we're talking about this, I'm gonna screen share your website here.
Oh God.
Yeah,
it's
there
so
you go.
Date.
So here's some images that Renee's done. So what, when you're starting in photography, and I would argue most any hobby or profession or craft that requires creativity and is subjective, when you're first starting, you're fueled in a lot, depending on the person, obviously, but in a lot of ways, you're fueled by others' opinions, right? People will get into photography and they're like, you know, well, mom and grandma and dad, everyone says that I'm a great photographer and I should pursue this. They may or may not be, but they're getting encouragement from other people. So they press forward, and the same thing with online, right? So you get a little micro endorphin ego polishing every time you get a thumbs up or a like or a great capture on one of your images, right? So, and you want that. So you get a little bit and you're like, oh, I got an endorphin rush last time I put this kind of thing up. Let me put some more of that up, you know, and then you keep going. That then it becomes a crowdsourced ego that you're feeding. How do you get away from that and get to like what you're doing, which is, you know, I just had this thing burning, you know, at the back of my skull, and I had to create it, and there it is. If you don't like it, I don't care. How do you get to that point?
That's practicing extremely strong boundaries with yourself. And that's really hard to do, because everyone, including myself, succumbs to the like, well, why didn't I get as many likes on that image this time? Well, that sucks because I totally like that picture and whatever. And you have this emotional connection to it. And it may or may not have been good or not. And it could have been just the algorithm saying like, nope, you're not going to win today. And it could have been that maybe the image was really terrible. But the end of the day, you still have to figure out what your boundaries are. So if you want to go out and get likes and feel good about like what's going on in the pictures, but really it's about pleasing other people, well, go photograph pretty girls in pretty dresses in natural light, and you'll get tons and tons and tons of traction. Is that necessarily the thing that'll feed your soul? Well, that's up to you, right? Because it's like a drug hit. It is an endorphin rush. So then you have to say, well, it's going to have to get bigger, because you're going to get numb to like, well, you know, oh, I got 50 likes in that picture. And then all of a sudden 50 likes isn't enough anymore. It's got to be 100. It's got to be 200. And it's got to be 300. And it's going to be 1,000 and 20,000. So you have to acknowledge that like that hit that's going on in your brain is just going to keep increasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
it's like a drug, right? It's just like a drug.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So you're really going to have to have very strong boundaries with yourself, and however you build that for yourself is between you and you. It's not up to anybody else. I would definitely spend some time reading about psychology and reading about addiction, which sounds really strange to say. But social media and feedback it can become an addiction, but it also can be extremely helpful. So I would say it comes on top of boundaries. You have to know where the feedback is coming from. So great feedback comes from people whose work you admire and trust, and not someone who's just gonna pat you on the back no matter what you did, saying, hey, you did a great job. And that's important too, because we all need encouragement as well, because we're humans. So it's this crazy balancing act that's never going to be perfect. You're always going to be screwing something up. But at the same time,
it's hard, right? It's hard. It's hard. How do you like friends and family and loved ones, they're generally speaking, overly complimentary on your work, even if it sucks, right? Which in some ways is a detriment, because you need harsh criticism about your work, right? You need someone to tell you, like you're saying, yeah, this is great, but the girl's butt was sticking out. So
the other side is it's like, well, okay, to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
It's like, if you want to have an opinion on, well, what do you want to accomplish with your artwork? Do you want just people to say nice things about it and then you go about your day? Then by all means, message your mom and message your family and message the people who are always going to say nice things to you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with admitting the fact that I do this because people say nice things to me. Because for some of us, and a lot of us in different scenarios, that's sometimes the only place that people will say nice things to us, is when we do something that's pretty that people like, right? Life is hard. And that's what it is. But on the other hand, if you're wanting to elevate your work and elevate yourself for yourself, for whatever that definition is, then you have to start finding places that you can trust, that will give you reliable, honest feedback that is not petapixel comment sections or 4chan or Instagram late at night, where people get just destructive and they're not helpful at all. It's finding those places wherever those exist for you, and those are going to exist at different places, on the internet and in person. I would say that your family, your spouse, even if your spouse is like super hardcore and super judgy, their interest is still in seeing you become a better person. And so sometimes they're not as harsh as they need to be. But this is a conversation between you and yourself and no one else. That's kind of where I sit on that. I mean, I could ramble for a really long time about it, but I love it. I'm like slowing myself down. I'm like, shut up.
Turn my governor down a little bit. No, that was good. That was good. Like I said, I was showing some of the work that you've done as you were talking there, and so people can judge for themselves if you suck or not, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's lots of people out there who say that I'm just like the worst artist ever and whatever else.
Really?
And I'm fine. Oh my God.
You got a crowd of haters for some reason.
Hate mail. Oh my God, the hate mail I get is ridiculous. I'm like,
but it's a testament to the thickness of your skin, because you plow on and you're like, I don't care what these people think, I'm still going to create.
Oh, but that does not mean that I don't sit there wrapped up in the blankets with a whole bunch of tears and some Kleenex every now and then of just being like, this is stupid, I hate this art. It happens.
Yeah. The internet. It's the internet.
Be as thick-skinned as you want. It's hard sometimes, like, have a bad day and somebody's like, you suck. And I'm like, like, what if I do suck? And then like this spiral starts out of my head, right? Of like, oh my God, what if I am actually the worst person ever? And I'm like pro killing animals and like, and then this dialogue starts, and then like it's just like how it goes.
We're all like that. Around. We are all like that. It's the same thing, but at the same time, I mean, I look at it like you're not old enough to know about this, but back in the day, man, that sounded so condescending.
It kind of a little bit, yeah. I got a present for you.
Reverse
Here you go.
ages.
Happy
Reverse ages.
birthday!
I know. No, but like back in the day when when I was learning photography on film, it was insular, right? So there are very few people. Even if we had Photoshop to put, to make 9 gigabyte files or whatever, and we finished this masterpiece that we thought was the best work we'd ever created, there's only a handful of people that would ever see it. Like literally we're creating for ourselves and maybe a couple of other people that happened to see the print that came to wherever the print was hanging. There wasn't like an online community of anonymous people. That's the key, of anonymous people that could trash your work with impunity, or that could give you and heap unwarranted, in some cases, praise on you to push you in a direction that you shouldn't have been going in. So
it was the hate mail and the praise have the same value online, which is something to keep in mind. Like those likes and like great photo and the great capture are just as useful as like you're horrible and you suck and you should never take pictures again. They both have the same value on the internet. They have the same value. Until either you suck is coming from your mentor of being like, oh God, all right, so I'm going to take that with some weight, or this is really great and this is why. It has to come from trusted places. So you forget though, I've been in this industry for 20 years as of next month. So I remember the before digital days very well.
20 years? What?
Yeah, man.
What? Okay, so you're a vampire. I understand. See, you are a vampire. I understand. Well, so am I. So we're good. We should hang out.
When I'm like your age, I'm like 90.
Yeah. I know. Well, I am 90.
It's not going to hold up.
I don't know. I think you're doing just fine. Well, cool, Renee. Thank you for doing this. This was awesome. And I think the folks that are going to watch this are going to get a lot more out of it than just the critiques that we did, which I was hoping for. So when you and I talk, it's always like this. Even if no one's listening, it's always like this. We have a real conversation about. Normally it skews geeky. I'm surprised it didn't skew about, time travel and the multiverse and all that this time. Yeah, quantum physics, all that stuff. So very cool. All right. So the URL that you want people to go to, is it still reneerobinphotography.com?
Yes, sir. Although the website is in the process, I'm rebuilding a new one right now. So we'll see whenever that goes live. Who knows? We were just, cool. I'm doing this giant migration of everything from one platform to Google, and I'm learning that it's like holding on to a pack of angry honey badgers that are covered in oil.
and are hungry, and they're starving. God. They haven't eaten in 3 days.
Oh, it's just horrible. It's just the worst experience ever. Like, thank you, ma'am. May I have another? It's just bad.
It's like me. What you're going through is similar to what I'm going through with like getting all this live streaming stuff configured. I was telling someone the other day. Yeah, have you ever read the Stephen King book, Pet Sematary?
Yeah, right.
You remember if you remember the book, I think they had this in the movie too. But in the book, there was this thing they called the thicket, where in order to get to the pet cemetery to bury your dead thing for it to come back, you had to go through this thicket, which was designed to not be easy to pass. But once you got through it, you got the good stuff, which was, life after death, for what we know how that turned out. The thicket is what I'm in now, or hopefully I think I'm getting through it almost, but it feels like I'm going through that thicket, learning how to do live streaming. And that's what you're going through with this Google migration.
I got Gandalf right now, like, you shall not pass. And I'm just like, it's like raging Balrog, just like, watch me, I will burn everything to the ground. And Gandalf's like, nope.
You should use this experience and channel this feeling of angst and Googleness into some art. I want to see how would this manifest in a Renee Robin piece. I would love to see that.
It wouldn't. It just makes me want to like stick holes in things.
This is be a black screen.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like me repeatedly bashing my own head into the desk, just being like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. This is why I pay other people, and it's not working.
I know. Trust me. We're in
Cool
misery
work.
together.
Yeah.
All right,
Don't ever
lady.
go photography professional. It's not photography at all. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. The more professional you get, the less photography you do. Right?
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. All right. Well, thank you, Renee Robin. And we'll see you around the TWiP Pro. Get in there and comment and tell some people what you think about their stuff. All right. See you later. You're like, yeah.
I will. I was like,
right,
how do
see
I
you
follow that?
Bye, Renee. This is TWiP.